Hi everyone, it's Clarissa again, your Club Pilates Master Trainer as well as a Peak Pilates instructor and among other things that I'll save for a rainy day. And a couple of you may know, or maybe you don't, but I do have some experience in working with professional athletes. And I encourage you to check out my video with the Commander's wide receiver, Terry McLaurin, for a little bit more on how I programmed his session and things of that nature. But let's begin. So, something to keep in mind when working with Pilates or working with athletes as it relates to Pilates is that it's not going to be the same way or the same even format or formula that you would have when you're working with traditional clients, whether it be in your group class or whether it just be in a regular private setting. Majority of the time when I work with athletes, it's usually on a one-on-one setting or a small group where I have 2 or 3 of them at once, but it's never really more than that. So that already is going to make the exercise and the workout different because they're paying for that one-on-one attention to detail. When it comes to programming, I either sometimes start with footwork or I start with something maybe a little bit more subtle like stretching, because usually when I have the athletes come in, it's after one of their workouts. Rarely do I see them before they start, whatever it is that they're doing, with their own trainer or with the facility that they're in. And so if they are coming in and they've already had 1 or 2 workouts prior, the last thing that I really want to do is push them even further, even to the point where they have muscle failure, because then that could then result in an injury. So really keep in mind when you are working with athletes, ask them, have you worked out already today? Or how is your body feeling? Or how sore are you on a scale of 1 to 10? That is going to be vital when it comes to programming and training. So maybe you can ask them prior, or if you feel like you have enough tools in your toolbox, you can ask them the same day and then kind of program from there. So a lot of times, like in my video with Terry McLaurin, I started him with the rollback bar and we just rolled back and come up, because being that I had worked with him previously, I knew that his back was tight. He might have had some stiffness. He felt a little achy or sore. And I felt like at that particular time, utilizing the rollback bar would allow him to, number one, get him a little bit more mobility in his back and also loosen up his lumbar spine, which I knew was already tight prior because his hamstrings are tight. And traditionally, especially working with athletes, a lot of them are going to have tight hamstrings because they're either just, they're focusing more on power or strength. And typically, the more strength you have in your muscles, the tighter that they become, just because they need to be able to have that strength to help you stabilize. So that's why I started with the rollback bar and loosening up his back, and that also kind of loosens up his hamstrings a little bit, because especially when you find that two-way stretch when you're reaching your legs into the wooden dowel or whatever it is you're doing as you roll back. I also did a couple of things to kind of stretch out his chin, or not his chin, but the back of his neck, because traditionally, if your lower back is tight, your neck is probably tight as well. So they all work hand in hand. Your neck mirrors what your lumbar spine does. So like I said, the biggest thing that I do, especially at the start of the session, is do something that feels good to the athlete or the client, just to kind of help them get loose, and help them start feeling really, really good. From there, I think I added the exercise tree using the springboard or using the rollback bar, again, targeting those hamstrings and all that fun, juicy stuff. If I was on the reformer, I might start with lighter springs. And you might be thinking, well, why would you start with lighter springs? You're going for power and all these different things. 9 times out of 10, our athletes in particular are going to be quad dominant, right? That's where a lot of them are weight bearing. And so I'll either put them maybe on 1 or 2 springs on the reformer and have them slide out and in, or I sometimes do it with no springs and have them work their hamstrings a little bit more, because that's usually an area of opportunity for the athletes, because not only do they need to stretch, their hamstrings, they need to strengthen them. And working the eccentric and concentric movement of the back of the hamstrings, especially on the pull in and having them close that carriage completely, is really something that's going to be beneficial from them. So that way they're not putting all the pressure on their quads, because guess what? If they do, at some point, it might even go to their knees, which can then cause further injury. And also, footwork is just a great way to mobilize the feet. One of my clients, he had turf toe, right? So by me putting him on the foot bar and really focusing on what his feet are doing, that will then allow him to activate, the more dormant side of his foot, which was either his pinky toe, maybe his third, big toe. It just kind of depends. But with turf toe, primarily the big toe is going to be overactivating. So utilizing footwork, toes, arches, heels, calf raises, running, all that fun stuff really helped me mobilize his feet and get him moving. Now you might be wondering, okay, Clarissa, well, what do you do in the meat and potatoes of the workout? I might do a little bit more stretching there and a little bit more intense stretching. Like maybe I do Eve's lunge and add in a quad stretch if I'm utilizing the reformer. Or, I might do a couple of trees, or I might, depending on how he's feeling, I'll maybe put his feet into the leg springs and do a couple of lower lifts just to wake up his core and his lower abdominals, and also stretch out, you guessed it, those hamstrings, because when your legs are up at 90, you can really start to feel the length. And I cued him to keep the back of his tailbone and glutes heavy, so that way he could learn how to move his legs independently of his pelvis, so that we would have a little bit more flexibility, mobility, and range. And then I might even give him a slight inversion. Now, if I'm doing an inversion with a pro athlete utilizing the springboard, something that I learned as of late is that you have to put the springs up a little bit higher when using the springboard. Why? Because they have a larger body mass. So traditionally, when you're working with a regular client, you would, and you're utilizing the springboard, you put their leg springs right around a 5 or a 6 maybe. Sometimes even a 4, just kind of depends. But when working with an athlete, and mind you, some of my clients are closer to 300 pounds or over 200, and they're just really, really strong, they are going to need a little bit more support because they got more body to just lift. Doesn't mean, they're incapable. It just means it is what it is. Their bone mass might be a little bit heavier, but more importantly, their muscles are much bigger than what mine would be, right? As a 5'6", 130-pound woman. So it's just different. So I usually set their springboard setting up to maybe like a 7 or an 8, depending on their length and their body. And I either have them put their hands on the wooden dowel and push out, but sometimes I don't, just because they're already up here when they come in. So doing this, to me, only reiterates a bad movement pattern that they already do, right? Because a lot of times when they're doing it, their shoulders will be up in the ears. So if I do have them use the wooden dowel, I have them arms a little bit wider, and we go goalpost arms. So that way they can learn how to initiate from their, not their traps, but their latissimus dorsi muscles, right? Because I'll have them press the back of the elbows down, and it automatically pulls the shoulders down away from the ears as well. So I know they're activating what I like to call the second powerhouse. And what I learned from my classical Pilates cert was the second powerhouse, the scapula to rib connection. That's what I'm putting emphasis on when I'm doing the inversions with them, and even with my regular clients as well. So I put them up at a higher setting. I have their arms a little bit wider. I don't do the push. We go out here, or we place their hands down by their hips. And I might even have them flip their palms up towards the ceiling, again, to open the pecs and put a little bit more emphasis on the back of the shoulder blades as well. Or I have their palms face down. It just kind of depends on what I'm feeling that day. So that's usually what I do in the meat and potatoes of the workout. I might incorporate a little bit more strength, depending, again, on how they feel and their level of soreness and, what their body is feeling during that particular day. And then again, towards the end, I do something that really makes them either feel really using power or doing skills or rehearsal moves that they already do. With Terry, it was so much fun. I got to throw a little plush ball at him and work on the hands and things like that, just because that's what he's used to doing, and he enjoyed it, and it was fun, and we had music going. It was a blast. Or I'll do something a little bit more stretch focused, even deeper stretch. maybe like mermaid, because a lot of times those guys have really tight latissimus dorsi muscles and quadratus lumborum, which is located on the back of the lower back. So that might be a little bit tight there. So I might add in a mermaid variation, either on the chair or on the reformer. I tend to do it more on the chair when I'm working with them, just because it gives me a little bit more space, and sometimes their knees might not bend a certain way. I then might even work on, sitting down and standing up without using their hands, and work on the quickness and the speed of that, because oftentimes those guys are getting knocked down on their bum and they got to be able to get up immediately and keep rolling. So those are just a couple of tidbits and things that I do when training a couple of my pro athlete clients. It's really fun. It's quite the experience. And, I can't say that I do a one size fits all with them, with each one, because they're all different. They all have different areas of opportunity in their body. They're all different sizes. They all play different positions. So I really take heed and I'm mindful of that. And I do my research. If they play baseball, I'm making sure that I know what position they play, what is required to excel at that. Especially I'm going to make sure I'm doing some type of rotation, whether it's, with a springboard or with some resistance, or it's just freestanding and we focus on the trunk rotation and, stabilizing the pelvis, or we are moving the pelvis. Like I said, it just very much depends. So with that being said, if you have any more questions as it relates to training athletes, you are welcome to watch my video with Terry McLaurin, or just shoot me a message or comment below, and you can email me, and I will, hopefully this helped answer any questions for you. See you guys soon. Bye.